are live. Welcome and thanks for joining in. This is again the Home Office Talks. Today, as I'm sure as you know, is the International Women's Day. Choose the challenge, you've seen it everywhere. So we thought about whether me or my colleague Petra Schäfer should moderate this exciting topic today. We could decide, so we're both around the virtual table from our homes. Good to see you, Petra, and happy International Women's Day. Where are you? There are you.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Did you know International Women's Day is celebrating 110 years anniversary today? And still need to talk about it. What a shame, I thought by myself. And what an opportunity at the same time. Did you know that according to International Women's Day, there will be no complete gender parity in this century? And none of us will see gender parity in our lifetimes, nor will many of my children. This is why World Women's Day is still a day to celebrate.
Well, that's quite a history. I do know that some women today in some countries, like Russia, Israel, or Cuba, they're having actually a day off. So the entire nation is having a day off while the rest of the women are working. But I have to tell you this. Let me show you a picture of the party leaders of my home country, Finland, the decision makers of my home country. Anything special about this picture, Petra?
Well, all the party leaders in this picture are women. And I guess 4 of them are under 35 years old, which
Indeed.
is special.
Indeed. So, as the quota guy in the broadcast, I can, of course, ask, where are the men?
Of course you can. But, well, it's really good to see that both German and Finnish governments are led by a woman today. And this is really making history. But today we have truly a great set of guests to talk about the state of women's rights. And let's get them introduced. So I would wish I could say hello to Lila Karbasi. Due to technical problems, she can't be on the call right now.
Well, she is on the call.
Hello.
She just joined from New York.
There you are. Hello, Lila. Good morning. Good morning to New York. Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome. So Lila Karbasi, Executive Management Team Member and Chief of Programs of the United Nations Global Compact. Hi, Lila.
Hi.
Good, you could make it, Lila. Straight from New York, I believe?
Yes, and happy International Women's Day to everyone as well. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Good to have you on board, Lila. And of course, we have Melissa Rencourt, who is an engineer, an entrepreneur, an educator, and a founder of the international organization Green Light for Girls. Good to see you again, Melissa.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Also, we have Sonika Mahanda, who is a computer engineer and co-founder of Alloy Technologies in Nepal. So she's dialing in from Kathmandu straight away. She has received the Young Champions of the Earth from the United Nations Environment Programme in 2019. And she's the National Geographic Society 2020 Emerging Explorer. So hi, Sonika.
Hello, everyone, and happy Women's Day. Thank you for inviting me today. Super excited for the conversation.
An amazing connection from Kathmandu, Nepal. And also a warm welcome, Susheta Govil from Covestro, who is our Chief Commercial Officer and member of the board. Good to see you, Susheta.
Good to see everybody, and thank you to Lila, Sonika, and Melissa, Petra, you, Nico, yourself. Such a privilege and honor to be on a talk like this because, it's just the power of some super great minds together on International Women's Day. Fantastic.
This is a live broadcast, and all what you can see and hear is live, as you already witnessed. And your questions and comments are always welcome. So please think about this. Please type them in, and we will answer your questions and your comments right away in the session. We also have today a Slido session open for you. So it would be great if you join us on slido.com today. The hashtag to enter this session is hashtag IWDCOV. IWDCOV. in capital or small letters, it doesn't matter. And send us your answer, and we will look at your judgment towards the end of today's livecast.
Cool. So let me do this because in virtual studios we can do this. So iwd.covestro.cov, get your commentary in. So I would love to start the conversation by talking a little bit about the role of the International Women's Day, highlighting the need to celebrate women's achievements, of course, raise awareness against unconscious bias, and this is, of course, choose to challenge. And I'm hitting my microphone here. And of course, to encourage action for equality all around the world. So let's kick off the discussion by asking all of our four panelists to share their perspectives on why female empowerment is an issue. And why is the International Women's Day important to you? And as we have a great global audience, I suggest we start off from the east to the west. So let's start with Sonika from Nepal, going over to Melissa in Brussels, over to Susheta in London, where you are at your home office, believe, and finally Lila in New York. So, Sonika.
Thank you for the question, Nico. Female empowerment or feminism for me is 4 different kind of freedom, I guess, because women face unique kind of barriers all around the world, and I feel that I've experienced while working in the field that women empowerment is directly related to freedom of finance, basically the financial freedom, social freedom, freedom of speech, and freedom of dreaming, I guess. So these 4 kind of freedom is very, very necessary for women empowerment. And International Women's Day is very, very important because even today, I mean, this morning I was in one of the programs where we were talking about how to make sure there's former sex workers, women sex workers, they can come up in front of the stage and then they can talk about shifting their job from being sex worker to women drivers, right? I mean, that kind of discussion, if it only happens in Women's Day, then it is very important until the day where we don't really need to celebrate Women's Day. And I think we will together achieve that milestone very soon. And it's every day we have to talk about it. Every day we have to make sure that not just us, but the women in the grassroots, women micro entrepreneurs, women in informal sector also talk about it and come in front and dream big and be free. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Sonika. And I think everybody can see we're having a great audience already pitching in. Let's go over to Brussels. Melissa.
Great. Thank you so much, Nico. As Petra mentioned, we've been celebrating this day for a while. And for me, it doesn't feel like an International Women's Day until we start by questioning in the very beginning, should we still be having an International Women's Day? And the message for me is loud and clear, yes. And for me, it's because this conversation keeps happening. And, as an engineer, when I started as a student 30 years ago, I remember a very particular situation that happened where it was a real battle on why we should, I think I was having a social to, celebrate female engineers. We're having pizza, and I was having to discuss, like, why do we need to do this, with my fellow male engineering students. And I remember thinking at that moment, I wouldn't have dreamed that 30 years later, I would still be having that same conversation. But unfortunately, bias still exists. Norms still need to be questioned. Gender stereotypes still need to be addressed. And so we have a path ahead of us, but we've also accomplished a great amount too. And I think what I'm enthused is waking up today and seeing all the wonderful messages to each other. It'd be lovely to have that every day, actually. But for now, let's celebrate it as International Women's Day. So thank you.
Cool, Melissa. I'm such a big fan of your work at Greenlight for Girls. It's just very inspiring of course, as a dad of a daughter. It's very close to my heart.
Thank you.
Susheta.
Thanks, Nico. Thanks, Petra. I mean, it's so inspirational hearing both Melissa and Sonika's viewpoints. Before I directly answer your question, Nico, I tell you, I feel so proud coming from India originally, now of course in the UK, that for the first time in Indian history, a space mission is being led by two women scientists of ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization. That's Vinita Muthaya and Ritu Karidhal. And that's so encouraging. And for me, something like an International Women's Day is really about a platform. It's not so much whether it should exist today, one day in a year, every day, but it is a platform, because female empowerment is not only a question of necessity, it is so much more important today than ever before. Like Melissa said, the biases still exist. We should aim for a consistent, never-ending dialogue to foster change. Coming from the sort of the corporate world, women currently hold only 5.8% of CEO positions at S&P 500 companies. That is still such a long way to go. So International Women's Day for me is a platform. It sums it up. It's about celebrating whatever we've achieved jointly as people across the planet, but also charting the path forward. Studies like the latest one of the Technical University of Munich clearly show the positive impact of women on social ethical aspects, working conditions, sustainability, which is absolutely needed today. And the sad truth, and Petra referred to it, that complete gender parity will not be attained for almost a century. So we need to encourage girls, we need to encourage our daughters, we need to encourage our sons, to encourage people around them to foster their interest in STEM courses. We need to get them enrolled into diversity and inclusion and role models. A new survey conducted by Microsoft in Europe say that there's a window between 11 and 15 that we can engage young girls in stem cells. So it's a small window, but my God, if we manage to do that, what a powerful way forward. So I'm all for this platform, and maybe quickly get to some of the opportunity areas and mask them.
Thanks, Susheta. And just again, thanks to our great audience getting in a lot of comments and also questions. And we can see already 9 results on our Slido questions. You can see right here on the side of my wall. So keep these things coming in. As we move over to New York, Leela, first of all, great to see you and great for having you with us. What is the role of International Women's Day from your point of view as someone who is, of course, running the programs for the UN Global Compact?
Thank you, and it's great to see Women's Day celebrated in all corners of the world. It's still an issue that needs a lot of awareness, and although there's been progress around gender parity and women's empowerment, we're still many years away from having a status that is acceptable. So it's really important to have a day like this where everyone can use their platforms, and whether they're companies or governments or UN entities like ours, it's good to just raise our voice and talk about this issue because we should talk about it every day. And it starts with changing the mindsets. It starts with this unconscious bias. I think it's also great to see that there are women and men in the discussion, because we do need men. It's a 50-50, world. So we do need men as much as we need women, and they need to be part of the conversation, of the solution. We need to start with the same understanding of what is it that we're trying to address. And I'll add also that with the COVID pandemic now, a lot of the inequalities have been simply, reinforced, whether it's inequalities around health, the economy, employment, security, social protection. I think all of those have affected women and girls around the world. And our baseline was not great to begin with, but now, with this pandemic, it's shown that we're even losing some ground, and it's absolutely necessary and urgent to talk about these issues And for companies that are putting it forward, like Covestro, it's very remarkable. So thank you for having this panel.
Wonderful. So, Lila, you're really touching the point. So, in times of change, we need to tackle the real issues and tasks of today. And this is also women empowerment and equality and diversity topics. So, encouraging our viewers out there. So, please let us know your questions about this topic today. So, type them in just into the chat and we will answer them right away. And I'm pretty sure there are so great women today on the panel to answer your questions and also to share your comments. It would be great to receive them, and just type them in, think about it. So, but coming back to the discussion, so having a quick look into the world of business, as you, Lila, just mentioned, the times of change we are in. So in businesses, which working environments do you think are more or less friendly for women to develop? Is there a difference we can make in businesses? And especially with this question, maybe you can also share a little bit of your working insights. So what you do in your daily life. That would be great to know. If we want to start this time, maybe from the other side round, if we start in New York with Lila and your insights on what can we do for women to develop in business surroundings?
Sure. So we at the UN Global Compact have developed the Women's Empowerment Principles together with another entity, UN Women, part of the United Nations. And this is a framework to help guide companies specifically around actions that they can take to reach women's empowerment. So specifically, I would say that there are 4 things that companies can do. There are many companies that have subscribed to, that are participants to the Women's Empowerment Principles initiative. But I would say there are basically 4 things that are important. One is to have women at the table, to ensure that there is a seat at the table for decision making. And that doesn't happen automatically. So it's important to mention that women, we've heard the statistic around, less than 10% women CEO for Fortune 500 companies. Very few women sit on boards of companies, whether it's at the executive management level, any sort of decision making, women need to be represented. Second, I would say that the company needs to be supportive of the employees, whether they're men or women, with children and dependent care responsibilities. So this is about, having flexible work arrangement, paid sick leave. It sounds very obvious, for companies that are advanced, but unfortunately it's not the case everywhere. Emergency leave, family leave, just flexible work arrangement for those who have to care for others in the family. Third, I would mention that there are, particularly now in the context of COVID, there are unintended consequences for all these stay-at-home measures. And we see, in the press, article after article, stories after stories, the hard decisions that women have to make. Because in many instances, they are the ones that are here to provide most of the unpaid care work in the family. So whether it's around decisions around employment or the alarming increase in domestic violence, the employer also needs to be mindful of that and put in place measures to address that, to talk about it, to provide a platform, a channel for these things to be raised. And then fourth, I would say that in the economy, being supportive of women entrepreneurs and women business owners is also a great way to empower women generally, whether it's around financing, general rights, access to great interest loans, things like that. All of that would help women thrive in the economy, become their own boss, and become great entrepreneurs. And we need more of that in the economy.
Absolutely, Leela. And we can add to this from the other perspectives as well, Sucheta, Sonika, Melissa. So if you want to step in to share your insights here.
So maybe I jump in, Petra, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more with Leela. I think it is a combination of opportunities, providing the seat at the table, the voice at the table for the right issues, and all the stuff that Leela talked about. And maybe let's give say my own perspective. As I said, many studies, including the one from the Munich Technical Institute, show that it makes great business sense for a diverse workforce at leadership levels and at all other levels. There is no doubt about it. So I think we need to stop discussing that topic about does it make business sense. I think now we absolutely and unequivocally know that it does. So the question then becomes, if it does make business sense, it does make social, ethical, sustainable, and economic sense, both for communities and for corporations, the question shifts around to say, how can we harness this power? And it's a combination of diversity, but it's also a combination of equivalence and removing the barriers that prevent these from happening. So specifically for women, I know childcare, sometimes nutrition and nutritional needs in certain markets to come up to the physical stamina required to do many jobs, even office jobs which require physical stamina. So availability of childcare, availability of nutrition, availability of slightly flexible practices, and most importantly, raising the esteem of women to underline the fact that they should add value, and then celebrating the wins of this value. And at Covestro, we do a lot. We've got targets both at board levels, at leadership levels, and across the organization. We aim to get to at least the 30% mark, if not higher. We aren't there yet. But amongst, we are at the overall population, we are at about the 23.3% mark as far as women are concerned, and a 25% mark at the board level. But we absolutely have to do more. The Green Light for Girls program we support. We've got lots of program to get people and girls into STEM courses at a very early level and then ongoing. But I still feel there is lots more that we can do all together, and we absolutely must do it. It's not enough till it's enough.
Absolutely. That's a very good comment. And maybe here, Melissa, you can just jump in right here, because we just mentioned Green Light for Girls. And what do you do to support?
Sure. This is interesting. Just the other day, someone had said to us within Green Light for Girls, and we have ambassadors, young ambassadors, and as Sucheta said, the instrumental age of 11 to 15 is just such an age that we can do so much to help inspire for the future. But a young woman a little bit older than that said to us, how do I feel or become more invited to the STEM clubs that are in my high school or in my university? And this just sent me back down memory lane. And I'm sure it's the same, and I'm sure that other people can relate to, is it's not necessarily that we're uninviting, but that feeling of not being invited or not invited. So it is a seat at the table, but it's also, what can we do within our business context to make sure that it doesn't feel like a club? And I don't necessarily only mean from a gender perspective. Of course, that's the conversation today, but it can mean from any number of perspectives. So how can we make it so that people are not just have a seat at the table, but they're invited to be able to be part of something, to extend that feeling that culture which is the hardest thing to change in an organization, especially a big one. And that's what I find very inspiring to try to do. And that's what we also aim to do within Greenlight for Girls, is how do we make sure that people feel like that they not only are invited, but they can create, and they can change that environment that they're in and create a brand new one for the future. And that's what I think that we need to do in the environments that we work at, and also to look at it with a critical eye and to say, does everyone feel invited to be part of this? And it's okay if it's something that needs to be changed. It's without judgment that we say that, but to look at it with a very, I say beginner's mindset, beginner's eye, as the designer in me, to say that there's a lot of opportunity that we have in front of us.
And a lot of work, I guess, too. So while you are talking, there are coming in great remarks and great questions as well over the channel. So thank you already to the audience. But before we answer these questions, I would like to come back to Sonika and hear your experience, especially working in a startup surrounding.
Yes. So before diving into the startup, right, I would love to talk about kind of women we work with through my company, the women micro entrepreneurs. So when we talk about women in business, for me, I've seen there are two categories basically. One who wants to start the business, and two who already have the business but want to scale it, right? So both of the sector are in informal sector. And what I've seen is it really all boils down to access to finance. I mean, for the women in my country, and that there are a lot of barriers, cultural and social norms that does not let women to own any kind of assets, where they can put it as a collateral in a formal bank and get the kind of finance they need to grow their business, right? So that means the banks or the formal funders, formal kind of funding does not really trust them, because the kind of building the trust is really, really conventional. Because you're saying if you don't have any ownership of asset, you cannot really access any kind of finance. It really does not work for women, right? This kind of conventional system was built without having any kind of gender intentional approach. That's what we have experienced in the field, which is why we are trying to see, through Alloy, we are trying to see how we can use technology and use digital tokens to ensure that there is a trusted link between the source of the fund and the destination of the fund, and give the impact and the fund tracing in real time. So that now the banks or any kind of funders does not really have to say, oh, I can't really trust this woman in the grassroots who wants to start the business, but then maybe she is not using that in business, right? Because there is a very, very trusted, linked and integrated ecosystem. So that's exactly what we are trying to do right now. And we've seen women are mostly aligned towards agricultural business, and also in Kathmandu, very, very unique and evidently women-run electric vehicle sector. So we really hope through Alloy's work, we want to see how we can lift their financial accessing ability and to help grow their business. And I think as a startup, grow with them. Yes.
Very important, the finance part of it. But Nico, what do you think? Shall we jump into one or two questions?
Yes. Let's and thanks for the great audience. We have already 15 people who have participated at the Slido. Looks very, very interesting to see where the forecast is on gender parity going forward. So in 10, 50 or 100 years or never. But let's take one of these questions. I want to take this one because let me just scroll a little bit. Let's take this one. Thank you, LinkedIn user. Any thoughts on quotas, pros and cons? If yes, at which level? If no, how to ensure involvement in decision making? As the quota guy on this broadcast, I'm allowed to ask this question. So quotas, pros and cons. What do you think?
All right, I'll dive in.
Should I ask our chief commercial officer first? Because I mean, you as a board member obviously have a big role to play on kind of to see how this may be developed.
Right. Right. Thanks. I'm asked this question many, many times, Nico. The truth of the matter is, till you are at quorum, you need every measure possible to get to quorum. Let's be very aware of that. You don't get to numbers or you don't get to quorum till you set some KPIs. And like any other KPIs that either the governments or the corporate world or even NGOs are judged by, this should be one other KPI. So I'm going to flip it around and say it's a little less about quotas for me in my mind. It's like any other return on investment metric. And if you can have return on capital employed, if you can have profitability, if now you can even have ESG metrics, then my God, you need it if you aren't there. And people should be governed, should steer their businesses, should steer their communities accordingly. The but, so for me, it's another metric and it's very important till you get it. The but, of course, once again, like any other metric, is that it cannot run away on its own. So we've seen that even with profitability, when you start judging corporations on quarter to quarter profitability, it becomes a very short-term focus, and some of the long-term measures on sustainability, circularity, planet, ESG, people goals do fall by the wayside. So very much like any other metric, you need that balance of what it's aimed to achieve and how you can get there. So there is a but to it, but absolutely we need those metrics. So for me, it's not sort of do we need it, but how we get it into our steering and how we get to successful metrics like these.
And just to quickly add to that, I'm just reading what Dr. Caroline have wrote in the comment. I think the con part, I don't know if it is cons, but whenever women get some kind of opportunity because of quota, it's usually people basically misunderstands it with whether she deserved it or not. Is it just because of the quota? It's kind of judgment that's thrown out to that specific women. So that might be some sort of biasness or some sort of cons that comes with that quota system. That's something I thought.
Yeah, I will build on that, Sunika. Thank you for that, because it's, do I like quotas? No, but are they necessary? Yes, and especially in many areas, because it is necessary to be able to look at things and provide opportunity, I think. And like Sucheta said, it's a type of measurement. But I would love that people wouldn't have that immediate bias of what it means to it, because it doesn't help what we're trying to do. I remember my first job as an engineer. I was elated. I was jumping up and down, so happy. And that disappeared in a second when someone said, must be nice. You got the job because you're a woman. And I thought, well, that's funny. I thought I got the job because I deserved it. I did not for 1 second think that's why I got the job. It wasn't until someone said that. So I think that one thing that we can also be careful is the things that are said. We should be lifting up each other. And if just to be able to give that opportunity and that confidence to be able to go into anything that someone wishes to do. So I'm hoping that at some point we don't need quotas in areas that we have it now, because we need to look at things in a way that's equitable and inviting for all.
And I'll add also, I agree with all these comments and this assessment around the need for quotas. I think it's absolutely necessary to have goals and targets to measure where you are, where you want to go. In fact, we created an initiative called Target Gender Equality to do just that, to look at percentage of women in executive teams and at CEO level and on boards. And we offer quite a lot of tools and resources to help understand how to set your goals, how to achieve your goals, how to set your targets as well. And I think it's absolutely necessary as one of the measures. It's not the only measure, not everything can be put in the form of a target. There are a lot of things around mentalities and bias and cultural shifts and, enabling environment, as we call it, that are important too. But for a company to understand the strategy around it and to set proper goals and targets, that's a very practical way to move things forward.
Right, absolutely. And there's still one very good comment I would like to look in by Yan Ling Lok, one about having, maybe Nico, you can also share it here, having one woman at the table at the beginning, but still poses huge pressure on her. In a world where there are still only a few female high-level managers, I wonder if such female leaders need to push even harder to promote female candidates for a certain, we cannot see it all here, it's very long, it's a long comment. You just have to click here. So it's in the end, it's about whether women have to really foster the promotion of other women as well to get more on the table. So this is the question to you, whether kind of candidate hosting or really promotion of women or a network is absolutely necessary. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very uncomfortable position for a woman to be the only woman in a board or in an executive team. I'm part of the executive team of the Compact. Luckily, we're many women. I'm part of a board of another initiative around climate change, and I'm the only woman there. And depending on how the other men approach the issue, you can feel in some instances that, yeah, you're the only woman, and it's not a comfortable position to be in because you feel you have to either do more or be part of the group, or I think there needs to you need to avoid being in a situation like this. And in boards of companies where you have more than 10 people, I can't get the point that you can find more than 2 qualified women to be part of these groups. So 1 is not enough. It doesn't mean you've achieved anything, and it's actually putting quite a lot of pressure on that woman who's the only one on the board.
Right.
Yeah, I have to say, if you're if there's not enough quorum of let me use the word, the minority group. In this case, let's treat it as women, but it does put pressure because that one person amongst the majority needs to work harder, more differently to influence decision making, because that's what we are. Finally, if you're at the table, then you better influence decision making, you better influence positive outcomes. So it is tougher, it is harder if you're one voice amongst sort of the norm. And we do need to work harder. Everybody just needs to work harder, that there's a more diverse voice at the table, that it doesn't become the majority group and the minority group. One has to fight against that. One has to get diverse views around the table and across the board, and make those special skill sets valuable to both the outcome as well as the decision making.
Right. Okay, so this was very interesting to follow up on this comment from China, I guess, or at least East Asia. Should we jump back into our questions? Though there are still live questions dropping in. Thank you very much. So please think of putting your questions right into the chat or your comments, and we will follow up. But we still have a few very interesting questions also for our panel, right, Nico?
Absolutely, and thanks for typing them in. I think this is the key of live broadcasts, to get the very actual commentary and feeling of the audience as we are having International Women's Day. We have already lots more comment on the Slido. Thank you very much. I think the last one that just came in. Thank you, Len Ying. Look, great. Thank you. It's great to see that live interaction. I think this is something which I want to show and talk about, because we have seen a lot of I challenge the unconscious bias talk today. So, Katrina, thank you for your comment and question. Providing opportunities is key. How can we encourage senior management to have trust in younger women to tackle a difficult task or a project? Do we have a problem of unconscious bias here? I think this is interesting, because we think about unconscious bias towards gender or background, towards Finnish people or Germans or Brazilians. But what about this topic here? I think this is really interesting. Maybe I mean, Melissa, as you work with a lot of younger girls, maybe do you maybe have a perspective on this, on how to kind of overcome if there is a bias?
I do. One is that we send a clear message, or we aim to send a clear message, and that is to any young woman of any age to go after exactly what they want to do. So to not let things get in their way, which some can be related to age, related to experience, related to opportunity, related to education, whatever it is that they feel that they might lack. What we feel is that dedication, drive, enthusiasm can make the possibility become a reality. But you also need an organization that's very open. So I do think there is an unconscious bias there. There is for so many things, and we can talk about a lot of different topics is that there's biases around. And one of them is on experience or age that goes with it. It used to be, it's still the case that sometimes that startles me when you're applying for a job and someone asks how old you are, and I think, well, what does that have to do with anything? It's about the experience. It's about what you can bring to the job. So that is a very important message that we give to young girls. And in fact, even during our events, and we're having them face to face when that's possible, when they're virtual, we encourage even the youngest ones to come forward to the companies that we bring forward, like Covestro, and say, hey, I want an internship, even at the age of 12 or 14 or 16 or whatever that might be, because this is when experience starts. It's not a magical time where it says, I've got enough experience to do the job. So there's two sides. So there's building the confidence to be able to go after it when you want it, when you think that you are the best person for the job. And then secondly, on the company side, on the organizational side, to be open to the possibility that the best person for the job may be someone that's new to the experience, or someone who's building their experiences going forward. So I think age is a fascinating thing, because I don't think it means anything. And I think that it's all about what we bring to it and about the experiences that we gain along the way.
And maybe we can just thanks Melissa. Maybe we can just take a quick look at where we are on Slido right now. So this is interesting. When do we achieve gender parity? The judgment so far is that 50 years. So not in 10, not in 100, but also not never, but in 50, because there's a lot of discussion about what can we really do to accelerate the process. How can we get quicker to a situation where we don't have to talk so much about equality. I mean, I'm just raising my home country, Finland, where actually we have sometimes struggle finding men. It's kind of the opposite compared to many other countries. So what can we do to accelerate the process? And maybe also your commentary on, is from 50 years from now, is this, do you agree? Who wants to go first?
I think we can definitely accelerate the process if we really want to invest in all kinds of women empowerment, right? Right from breaking the shackle of social and cultural norm, or giving the kind of financial freedom, or just encouraging them to raise their voice is very, very powerful, I guess. And I think everybody have to lead by example. We just don't, it will not happen if we just talk about it, right? We need to also implement the plan and work towards it together to maybe achieve it in another 10 years or 5 years. We never know. I'm pretty hopeful about it. Yeah.
Any other comments? Is this becoming reality? How quickly? And what can we do to accelerate it?
Yeah, I guess, Nico, I agree with Sonika that we need to accelerate it. I think whether it's 50 or 100 years, it's still too long. It's much too long. Like many other things, I would like to see this being addressed far faster. I need to personally address it far faster. And it's a question of getting young, capable, talented women into decision making, regardless of whether it's in the organization or communities, just into decision making and action, and then also enabling people to stay. Because a large part, we talk about recruiting or getting seats or giving opportunities. But remember, there's also a large part of the reverse drain which takes place because of the barriers to do with childcare, barriers to do with social norms, barriers to do with expectations. Even in some cases where women are perceived to be more successful than their, say, partners, there are social norms which sometimes prevent them to go beyond that and, want them to dumb it down. I have seen personally, even among some young girls, there was a young girl, a real kid, who once said, she was very interested in mathematics, but she was really dumbing it down in her school because she felt she didn't belong. She didn't belong to the norms related to young girls and be seen as pretty and playing with other things. And so she was really dumbing it down. And those kind of social pressures occur later in life as well. Encourage and recruit, but also to ensure that the reverse drain doesn't happen, and to put in place some of those aspects. The second thing, my message to young girls and to myself to help them come up is remember that there is statistics to show that women tend to highlight all the reasons why they are not fit for a particular role versus say, hey, that's my potential, let me go for it. So I would say to absolutely encourage them and reverse the question and say, what would you require the organization to do? We may not be able to do 100% of things, but what would you require the organization to do to help you meet A, B, or C that you see as success criteria? And I'm pretty sure that then the answers will come about. So in summary, we have to accelerate it. We have to flip around our thinking, and we have to get people in, but also stop some of the drain that takes place.
Leela, what do you think? How can that be solved also on a multinational or political level? This is, Sucheta was talking a lot about the personal mindset of young girls, women coming up, but also how can we set the framework here?
Yeah, well, that's right. I have a lot of hopes around the younger generations because, little by little, this issue has become more talked about. So there's greater awareness, and the younger generation. It's clear that young women, young girls, they have different aspirations, and we need to build on that. Particularly, we see lots of younger women who want to, or younger men who want to work in a value-driven organization. The dominance of the financial bottom line doesn't do it any longer for part of the younger generation, and it's good to push for that and to kind of even change the norms around that, and the policies, because the younger generation, they want to work for companies that promote social equality, environmental sustainability, just generally, companies that put a premium or put a very, deliberate, strategy around sustainability. I'm also always very impressed by this statistic around nearly 9 out of 10 millennials would consider taking a pay cut to work for a company whose mission and values align with their own. So that's pretty remarkable. That this dominance around financial returns, money, etc., is maybe no longer the priority. But to your question around what can governments do, I think it needs to be answered according to the different national contexts that you have, because things are very different from one country to the other, and they're very, very basic, rights that first of all need to be reinforced in legislation in many countries around the world, and that's a starting point. There are countries that are more advanced and that are playing with regulation around quotas, regulation around access to finance and things like that. So all of these measures are important, and depending on the country, you have to start at very different levels, I would say.
Thank you very much. So as we are, thanks again to the great audience putting in your questions. We are getting towards the end of our time. Petra, what are your last coolest questions you want to ask the panelists?
Actually, there are two. So I start with my first one. So in your personal perspective, so are there realistic action items we can take to change the situation in the next 10 years? We've raised in this discussion a lot of different perspectives here, from business, from society, from your personal experience. But what could be special action items to really advance diversity in our surroundings? What would you say, Melissa?
Well, I would start by all of us. It's back to what I was mentioning before, but really looking around our workplaces and redesigning them with a different eye. Look at them with an open mind and determine who are we missing and why, and what will that do for us. And always try to take a look at what more we could do to be able to bring more people on board, and especially people who we don't see, who aren't part of the conversation. And it's, I think, environments like this that we start to create the change of culture on that business level that will start to change things. But also, I believe in all the work that we're currently doing. And again, going back to the question of why are we having International Women's Day? And it's because there's still so much work to do. And so I think all of the work that each of us on this great panel and so many role models that are out there have that necessity to continue to do what we're doing, and the very practical actions of being able to encourage others. And for us, within the organization that I lead for Greenlight for Girls, it means doing a number of different activities and events to make sure we're building confidence and inspiration to study STEM, to pursue STEM, because that is one avenue that the world needs, and that's one avenue where there's great opportunity. And that's the practical aspect that we take forward.
Wonderful. And Sonika, in Nepal and also in the tech world you're in, what could be done especially to foster this?
Yeah, one thing that really excites me, I am a woman in science, right? So something that keeps me more motivated is whatever I design or develop, scientific tools or any software program, it will be used towards empowering the ones who needs to be empowered, right? So that really excites me. And I think my takeaway from the whole discussion is we need to encourage more girls and women to go towards STEM. And then, whatever comes out of the scientific mind should be used to really empower the grassroots women who actually needs it to have confidence in them, or have confidence in the kind of business they can build with the tools that the girls in STEM have built.
Right. Absolutely. So Cheta, what could be a good action item?
First and foremost, I think, back to what millennials desire, what they want to be measured against. And I find more and more, Petra, once again, in our daily lives, we meet so many young people, both boys and girls, and other genders as well. The truth of the matter is, if we can get young people, especially young girls, to focus on societal problems or community problems that they can solve for, whether it's a water issue or an energy issue or energy storage issue, I think we motivate through that, the solving of problems, we motivate them to take a far greater interest in STEM subjects as well, because it's an avenue towards a much larger goal and a much larger purpose from a very young age. And that correlation, and not just keep it theoretical, but towards problems, just not only gets them to have an interest in the topic, but to solve it and also raise their esteem. So it sort of raises the floor and the ceiling at the same time. And I think as individuals, if we can fuel this virtuous cycle up from a very, very early age and keep it going, then we are more home than we ever have been in the past.
It's very encouraging. That's very encouraging, Sucheta. As we are approaching the end of our broadcast time, I just want to, end by asking if you have any final comments. But also, as a Finnish person, I would love to hear from you. How do you say Happy Women's Day in your own native tongue?
That would be great to hear.
And you can choose what your native tongue is because, after you learn languages of the other, you can ask yourself, what is actually your native tongue? I will say it in Finnish at the end, but...
Well, I speak 2 languages in Nepal. So my mother tongue is Nepal Bhasa. In that, we say Mahila Divas Nintuna. That's one. And another is Nepali, where we say Mahila Divashko Subhakamna. Mahila is women, and Divas is days. Subhakamna is happy. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sonika, for the Nepalese lesson. Who wants to go next?
So it's very close to both meaning and sort of even the pronunciation to Sonika. If I choose Hindi as my language, then I would say Shubh Mahila Divas. Shubh means sort of good, Mahila is women, and Divas is day. So Shubh Mahila Divas.
Amazing. That's Hindi.
Wonderful.
Well, I can go with French. Et je vous souhaite à tous une très belle journée internationale des femmes.
Merci beaucoup, Lila. And Melissa.
And for me, my native language is English, so I'll just say Happy International Women's Day.
Cool. Petra.
Ja, herzlichen Glückwunsch zum Internationalen Frauentag in German.
And I can be the last to say, hyvää maailman itsenäisyyspäivää kaikille. It was Finnish. Okay, thank you so much. We have reached the end of our broadcast times. Thank you so much for our dear panelists, Melissa, Lila, Susheta, and Sonika, for joining us from different corners of the world. Thank you also so much to the great audience who have been giving us their commentaries and questions throughout this broadcast. It's so nice to do these broadcasts, even the second year into the pandemic. But for us communications people, this is also a lot of fun. So thank you very, very much all to the panelists. Thanks to the audience, and tune in again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.